What's going on, everyone? It's Semp. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about episode 2 of Moon Knight, and specifically, when did Mark Spector's dissociative identity disorder begin? There's a lot of clues in the episode that indicate different things, so let's break down episode 2 and of course, the introduction of Mr. Knight. If you're new to the channel, just like Marvel, the MCU, comics, and everything in between, subscribe for all Moon Knight related videos. I'll be posting every Wednesday and then some, so let's go. To get into it, episode 2 is a very good episode in my opinion. Probably not as good as the first one or as intense, but we do learn a lot about Arthur and Mark Spector, which is a complete 180 from episode 1 that was really only shown from Steven's point of view. There are also a lot of hints and clues that are given to us throughout the episode to help us differentiate all the personalities that we have seen, and how each of these are going through their own mini story arcs. We of course have Stephen Grant, who in a way is kind of like the main character of the show right now if you really think about it. You then have Mark Spector, who is the real person of it all to make it short. Moon Knight is Mark with the powers of KHONSHU flowing through him, and then you have the newly added Mr. Knight, who is Stephen Grant with the powers of KHONSHU. The easiest way to look at it is through this beautiful picture here that I have created, taking us all the way back to the Venn diagram days. And so just so you know, these are the two split identities as Mark and Stephen, and then each of their suit-ups are also different, but they kind of overlap. Where it gets really interesting though is when we look into the, well, when did this identity disorder start to unfold? And I think the easiest guess that you can make was it started way back in the day, long before KHONSHU, Moon Knight, and the persona came around, but that's actually not the case. Mark may have had previous trauma to the incident, and even in the comics, although I won't get specific about the stories, but some of them do refer to him about being around 12 years old when things start going astray. So what's really happening though, and what we're seeing in the show, is that when he became KHONSHU's avatar and was revived, it fractured his memory and brain in general. So his past life of Mark Spector lives on, but now the full-blown trauma and identity disorder come to the forefront of everything. So his childhood and now the Moon Knight persona contributed to this change in mindset, meaning this likely didn't fully start until whenever he received his powers through KHONSHU. Now in the MCU, we don't know when that truly was, but odds are that it had to have been at least within the past couple months after what Layla was referring to in episode 1. What also backs this theory up is that Layla has never heard of Stephen Grant, nor this entire act as she calls it. So Stephen and the accent have to be relatively new, and this also goes for Arthur Harrow as well. He refers to Mark in their first talk at the museum in episode 1, when he said he figured Stephen Grant was an alias. So he must have known Mark for some time, or at least of him, through Ammit's powers. I mean, he even admits that he was a former avatar of KHONSHU, so Mark's story has to be relatively new. And now I'm not going to get really into the setting here, but seeing that we do have the GRC poster behind here in episode 2, I do think that this show takes place after the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but somehow right before summer. Now back to Stephen though, it was likely a persona that Mark used when he would travel as a mercenary, and then when he died and got revived, that trauma was likely fractured and he woke up as Stephen Grant. Because the mind loves to cling to memories, which is why the metaphorical twist of falling to sleep is what allows Mark to take over his body. So any sort of head trauma or sudden change in mindset that changes the brain's behavior, like sleep, triggers these transformations, and now both Stephen and Mark have felt each other's perspectives of being in control or being stuck on the inside.
I can scarcely move.
It's alright, just breathe through it. Gets easier.
How long you been doing this?
I don't know.
Over time in the series, we will likely see the growth of him trying to become as much as one singular identity that he can be, and over time he will learn to literally and figuratively work with these other identities. We have kind of already seen this starting at the end of episode 1 when Stephen gives Mark control to tap into the Moon Knight powers, and then in episode 2 it's all about the two of them getting to know one another. Mark technically knows everything about Stephen, and something you might have missed is the postcards that Stephen gets from his
Mom! 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 Mom!
seem to be the same ones from the museum, meaning that Mark knows everything about Stephen and has tried to keep this completely hidden from him over the past few months.
Mom!
Stephen also leaving messages to a phone number that Mark likely provided is another way to keep track of where and what Stephen is doing when he's in control. It's the same way he makes sure after his missions he puts himself back into bed so that when Stephen wakes up he thinks it might have been a dream. Mark knows Stephen from the inside out, but Stephen is just beginning to learn exactly how Mark works. It also seems like they're setting up that each personality has some sort of specialty that'll help keep them alive. Like mentioned in the beginning of the video, Mark is of course the mercenary and Moon Knight when he suits up. Stephen is the more level-headed, and because he's new to everything, he's sort of naive, but he's still extremely smart and knows a ton about Egyptian mythology. And then there's Mr. Knight, who kinda gives him the best of both worlds. So it's Steven's smarts with the power of KHONSHU flowing through him, which is hopefully a great teaser to what he can be when every identity has been mastered. In the comics, the Mr. Knight persona comes on later on, so it's kind of interesting to see it so early in the show, but I also think that's part of the story, and we're going to see Mr. Knight evolve in this series and beyond. We know from promotional material and talks with the director, they will be going to Egypt at some point in the series, so I'm really excited to see what kind of mythology we start to see, and maybe also how Steven brings his gift shop museum talents with him to decode ciphers, or make KHONSHU believe he's not the idiot he thought he was. Throughout all of this though, there is still one main piece to the puzzle that's missing, and that is Jake Lockley. Jake is a pretty important identity to the Moon Knight character, and so far he's been completely absent from everything. But there's a few of these 3 mirrored reflections throughout these 2 episodes so far, giving us a hint that maybe Jake does already exist. Because Mr. Knight and Moon Knight are suited figures in the alter identity category, which means that if Mark and Steven represent 2 of the mirrored reflections, the third purely human form has to be Jake Lockley. But as of right now, we'll have to keep on waiting. So let me know in the comments below if I've missed anything, or if you just want me to cover something in the coming weeks for Moon Knight. You can follow me on Twitter at AnotherMarvelG for daily news and updates, and if you like this video, definitely leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more. Other than that, I just want to say thank you. I'm another Marvel guy, and I'll catch y'all on a blip.